This episode of This Old Road doesn't contain a cool, photogenic old bridge, nor a stretch of century-old pavement. The significance of this road featured in today's video is that it was the last section of U.S. highway to be replaced by Interstate 80. This is Old US 40 at the Salt Lake City International Airport. The last remaining stoplight for traffic on Interstate 80, not just in Utah, but all the way across the country, was located at the access road for the Salt Lake City International Airport. When the final 4 miles of the freeway opened in August of 1986, the Associated Press wrote, "It took 30 years and 55 days, but Interstate 80 is now one uninterrupted 2,900-mile route." Even though the highway had been mostly completed earlier, there remained a pesky gap between 5600 West and Redwood Road, where interstate traffic was routed along the old highway which abutted against the airport runways. The US 40 signs were removed from this area in 1975 when the once great transcontinental highway was shortened to end near Park City, but Interstate 80 traffic continued to use this portion of the old route for the next decade until the freeway could be built. Here's an aerial photograph which I believe dates from the late 1950s. The view is looking north. The highway seen going across the bottom of the picture is US 40. Downtown Salt Lake City is that way, and Reno is off this way. Here's the terminal building. This is the terminal building that we today think of as the old terminal. That building opened in 1960, and I actually think it may have been under construction at the time of this shot. Now, there had been an earlier terminal which preceded this one, and it was located across the field over here on the east side. And I believe the site of that earlier terminal was where the general aviation terminal is today. This map from the U.S. Geological Survey is dated from 1975, and it sets the scene very well for today's video. Here's the road I'm talking about. The map calls it State Route 186, but this is Old US 40. In fact, this map dates from the same year that the designation of US 40 was removed from this area. Over here at right, the map shows that the interchange with Redwood Road is complete, but then there's a temporary end of the freeway, and traffic has to use the old highway west of this point. The map doesn't depict it, but I recall from the early 1980s that there had been a temporary extension of the freeway which led directly to North Temple in order to avoid having all of that traffic use Redwood Road to get between the freeway and the old highway. I'm not sure exactly when that temporary road was constructed, and today there's very little evidence of it remaining, but I know that it was in use earlier in the summer before the new freeway was opened. And again, that was in August of 1986. In this video, I'm going to look at 3 places from this map. I'll start here at the southeast corner of the airport. Then I'll move to this point, near where the airport access road intersected with US 40. And then over here on the western edge of the airport property. So here's the first location, near the southeastern corner of the airport, where US 40 used to abut the apron of runway 34 right. Now today, the airport property has been expanded across the former location of the highway. North Temple Street has been reconfigured to channel traffic toward the freeway, and that has then left a stub of forgotten but not abandoned street. Also, that runway has been renumbered to 35, but I'll talk more about that in a couple of minutes. So here I'm looking east on North Temple at about 2000 West, looking eastward toward downtown Salt Lake City. And you can see the street coming toward us is Old US 40, that's North Temple. And as it ducks under Interstate 215, it makes a swing toward the south in this direction right here, effectively abandoning this portion of the street. And then this portion of the street was left to be given to the airport to extend the runways. And if we look this way, you can kind of see that off there out in the distance. We'll go check that out here in just a second. That it does look rather odd for this short stub of a street that doesn't go anywhere and doesn't have anything on it and no traffic, for it to be so wide. I mean, it's even wide by Salt Lake City standards. Standing right on the center line of Old US 40, you can see that the road comes to an abrupt halt as it reaches this set of gates which block you out of the field. And actually, although it's closed to car traffic, it is open to pedestrian traffic and bicycles. During the day, you can easily walk right through, and I'll show you that here in a second, and walk right out to the second set of fences anyway. Or if you want to do your Wayne's World thing, you can basically stand right underneath where the flights land. And as you can see, the gate opens right up. And we're inside of the area that's open to bicycles and pedestrians, what used to be the old highway right here. Looking back the other way, the old highway through the gates, Old US 40. And I should point out right here that even though you see these ominous signs warning about federal regulations and no trespassing, that it clearly is posted as being open as a bike path, at least as long as you come during these hours right here. Now I'm going to jump to the other side of the runways, to the point where the airport access road intersected. Just west of the intersection, US 40 crossed over the Jordan River Surplus Canal. So this is the gate on the west side, and we can see here original pavement from US 40. We have the bike path pavement, which is newer, and then as we step off of it, we can see here the road pavement. You see the orange line, which would have been the left edge of the eastbound lanes right here. The westbound lanes would have been on the other side of the secure fence there. That probably also looks pretty much like original pavement. I don't see any markings on it, but we can see it comes through an abrupt end. And then back across that way, 100 yards or so, is where the bridge was. This highway edge warning is still here. A remainder from the days when there actually were two bridges crossing the Jordan River Canal here. And I'm looking due west at the moment. So I'm standing where the westbound lanes would have been. There's one still remaining, and I'm uncertain as to whether that's the original bridge or whether it was rebuilt. I have a feeling that at the time that they built the Wingport golf course, that they also rebuilt that bridge right there. The eastbound lanes would have been on that bridge or on its predecessor, depending on exactly when that bridge was placed there. So as we swing away from the bridge and turn just about 180 degrees, you can see now that I'm looking east, and directly ahead of me is a service road that passes along the southern edge of the runways that are on the eastern side of the airport, and those would have been the westbound lanes for US 40 right there. I'm standing basically in what would have been the right-hand lane. And at this point, this road that's in front of me here, this little used airport service road that is open to the public, there was a signalized interchange right here, a signalized intersection, I should say. And this was the point where you entered the Salt Lake City International Airport. So you'd come out North Temple along US 40, and then you would make the right turn at the light and go up this way toward the north, toward the airport. I didn't know it at the time I was out filming in the field, but I later learned during my editing research that this also had been the site of a deadly commercial airliner disaster 60 years ago. It happened on November 11, 1965, and United Flight 227 was coming from Denver and was descending too quickly. The Boeing 727 hit the ground about 300 feet short of runway 34 left and crashed here in between the highway and the end of the runway. 43 of the 85 people aboard Flight 227 were killed. The Civil Aeronautics Board report subsequent to the accident investigation revealed that the co-pilot had recognized the error and had attempted to correct for it, but he had been overruled by the captain. Had the plane come down a couple hundred feet even earlier than it did, it might have resulted in casualties on the highway too. US 40 is only about 750 feet away from the apron of this runway. The CAB determined that the accident should have been a survivable crash incident, so the legacy of this disaster resulted in improvements to evacuation procedures and changes to the design of the fuel lines in Boeing 727 aircraft. Now, I mentioned that the tragedy involved runway 34 left, but that is now the runway that's called 34 right today. After the freeway was built and the old highway was abandoned, the airport was able to construct a new runway on the west side of the terminal. That new runway became runway 34 left, but that number had already been in use, so that meant that there was a cascading renumbering of the other runways. This one, which previously was 34 left in the photo and where that disaster had occurred, was changed to runway 34 right. This one, the one that's very close to US 40 on the right-hand side, previously had been runway 34 right, but now is runway 35 instead. Aside from just the change in runway numbers, building the new landing strip also meant that the surplus canal had to be relocated to accommodate the new runway. So the canal was realigned across what had been the route of the old highway. This particular location is not accessible today because it is inside the security perimeter of the airport, but since I'm examining the interplay between the old highway and the airport, I thought I'd show the audience. Now I'll move on to the third remnant of US 40, and this is on the southwestern corner of the airfield.
Okay, the next place we wanted to check out was this section. It's on the west side of the Salt Lake City International Airport in an area called the International Center. This road bed that you see here was the westbound lanes of US 40. You can see the eastbound lanes just to the left over there. Quite overgrown with weeds and things like that. The cars in the distance that you see crossing between here and the Courtyard by Marriott are on Wiley Post Way, which has a ramp that goes on to Interstate 80, which is right there where you see the bridge. To give you some more context, we'll spin it around this way. Looking over here, that's the Hyatt Place Hotel. In the foreground, you can see more of the lanes between here and the parking lot. Those are the westbound lanes that are directly in front of me. I'm looking east toward downtown Salt Lake City, which appears off in the distance. And you can see the eastbound lanes there as well. We'll go over there and check it out a little closer as it comes out of the airport. Just beyond that parking lot right there is the southwest corner of the Salt Lake City International Airport. Okay, still looking east, there's the Hyatt Place Hotel again. And right here in front of us, we have some of the old pavement from old Highway 40. We can see along the left-hand side here the orange line that would have marked the left edge of the eastbound lanes. Now this section of road only goes for perhaps 30 or 40 yards, then gets cut off by the parking lot for the hotel. But it does pick up again on the other side of the hotel parking lot as it enters the section of the airport itself, and we'll see that as well. Okay, continuing on, taking a look at the lanes now to the east side of the parking lot for the hotel. As I swing around, We can see here that these are the westbound lanes of US 40. I'm looking east toward downtown Salt Lake City. Clearly very old pavement. In fact, we can see a white stripe in the road. On a roadway that hasn't been used to carry traffic since the mid to late 1980s. Looking a little further, we can see the perimeter fence for the airport. Just comes right across the middle of the road. The road looks pretty much the same on both sides of the fence, and that's because nobody's driven on either side of it since then. So if this were, say, 1985, I would be facing traffic moving toward me. That's again coming from Salt Lake City, headed toward my back, which is Wendover and Reno. Looking to the south of the westbound lanes, we find the eastbound lanes. Now there's an airport access gate here. So they've put down a concrete pad, strengthened it a little bit so that the rolling gate can work. And it looks like they've even repaved it directly. But if we look off to the left-hand side of where the repavement was, we can clearly see the old pavement and the orange line. That again would have been the left-hand edge of US 40.
I'm truly grateful that you stayed to the end of this video, so thank you. Please consider clicking on the thumbs up in order to let YouTube know that this video should be shared with other people who like this sort of thing. This old road explores old highways, trails, and rail beds, so if you enjoy that type of content, I'd be honored to have you as a subscriber.